Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, all your homeworks are graded for this class. I don't think they have any bread, but you can try sitting around the right on. Try to build something in their free time, something fun.
Not this one. I'll go to town. But I was thinking about starting on at least the final project now. Like, did you guys input sooner than later? For midterm? Final. I'm figuring that, like, you know, it's only like what, 4 weeks away. It's gonna creep up. No, it's more, isn't it? Is it? Like if we're halfway, or like 5 6 weeks. Yeah, 5 or 6 weeks. Yeah. So yeah. So figuring that it's gonna go pretty fast. Because I can't believe we're already halfway.
I know, right? It's something. Comes to programmatic piece. Is this the one I created last night? Andre, I installed a Vim into my Xcode.
Why?
I don't know, dude. I'm like so used to it from like my normal web development that it like bothers me that I didn't have it in Xcode anymore. I just did it last night, and it has 220 issues open on GitHub on the repository for this package. So I don't know how well it will hold up for a class, but we'll see. We'll see. It's just so much better. I hate everyone that like said that to me for 7 years. No, that's not true. For 2 years, and then I don't use Vim. I have Sublime Text Vim mode. Because my Vim setup is so fucked up, I like cloned somebody else's thing, which was the worst thing to do. But I'm getting a new computer next month, I think, from work. So I'm gonna start clean, and then I'm gonna go actually in iTerm Vim mode. I know, I don't know how long I'll hold up, but I had it in Sublime Text for like months now, and I love it. It's great.
I'm enjoying all my packages.
No, but I mean that's the cool thing though. With Sublime Text, you still have your packages. That's like the amazing thing. You have it both. It's a great thing. So I should probably go over notifications again in the homework, right? What's happening, guys? You didn't feel the notifications? Yes, you were supposed to implement that.
I just thought about it. I'm like, holy crap! I put the button here, but I didn't do anything with the notifications in my homework. But it's cool if you go back over it because I actually missed that. So I know what I'm talking about. And can you go over the on the scroll view?
Yeah.
How to make sure the bottom.
Yeah, I mean that one I expected. Like that's fair. It's more than fair.
So I got the top part. It works, but I can't seem to get the bottom to stop.
Yeah, I can go over it again today. Did you watch that video I posted?
Well,
did it help? Did it make it a little bit more clear?
Not as much.
Okay, that's
I think you had like a bottom of like 150 on, but when you set it to 0, it worked.
So when you set it to 0, it goes right to
That
the
bottom
last
line-
view. Oh, you had a bottom white part?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's because something is not set to 0.
yeah.
That's realistic. Okay.
So
Because I kept messing with it, and I'm like, dude.
If you want it to be through the bottom, your last view in your contents view has to have a bottom of 0 to the content view. The content view has to have a 0 to the score. And then that's all.
Okay, I had only one, had the view to the content view was 0, but the content view to the bottom of the view was 150. Okay.
ah, man,
Alright, that was pretty
They
simple.
have a full.
oh, I'm gonna get mine.
What are we missing? We're missing. So Heijing is late. Neil is in Miami still. Eric should be coming, and Alan should be coming. That's everyone, right?
Yeah.
Well, the video did help on what we were doing with the scroll view. And what that last piece of conversation that we just said, the fact that, that part is,
Did you guys have a chance to look at the button?
yeah. So I was like, man,
It's so much fun with it. So much fun. I might actually go over it today. Today we're doing programmatic views, so like everything we've done with that after that our session was just that, right? Like no rocket science happening. Right.
I don't know. So your background's in computer science, or
No, absolutely
was it graphic like design and?
It's a program they don't have here. It's like it was 50% design, 50% development. So you couldn't select in one because it's not like after a year or something you could choose. You had 3 years. It was only 3 years, but you had to do both. You had to be 2 years of design and 3 years of development, and then there were like there were pure design courses, pure development courses, and then there were courses that integrated together. I wish I had a computer science background sometimes, but then on the other hand, like if you're a front-end developer, like having that design skill is like it's valuable. If I look at my coworkers, something is like to me very off, and they're like, it's the same, And I'm like, no, it's really not though. Like it's really not. There's a 4 pixel difference, and they're like, oh, 4 pixels, but like to the designer, 4 pixels is 4 pixels. Right, I'm gonna get started because everybody's late, and that's not my fault. Today, I lied actually. I said we weren't going to do any code for 2 classes, and we're going to be only doing code today. We're going to see how everything we've been doing in storyboards we can do in code, because there's very good reasons sometimes. Oh, Alvin is not coming today, so we're only missing Jamie and Eric. There are very good reasons sometimes where you cannot use your storyboard, and I'm going to show you an example in a little bit. But we're not going to be learning anything new today in the sense that, well, we're going to be learning how to create everything in code, how to add all the layout stuff in code, but that's going to be about it. So, except if I have a little bit of extra time, I've been skipping some topics because we didn't have enough time, so maybe pushing one of those in, but we'll see how this goes. And let me actually show you an example of when you would want to use code. No, that's the homework. I made this last night because I was trying to come up with a fun thing that we could make together to illustrate why sometimes you want to use code for your views and your layout stuff. So if you look at the storyboard for this project, it's empty. So as you can see, there's nothing here. And if I run it, I have one button that says add item. And every time I click it, it just creates a new box with a random color. And it works in both directions. So it's perfectly like laid out using auto layout, and it's dynamic. So that's where sometimes you have to do stuff in code because you don't always have a set amount of items in a view or something like that. So this is a great example. I think we're going to make this together, and if not, the code is going to be available on GitHub. Cool. So let's take a look. Yeah. So today we're going to design layouts with all layout programmatically using NS layout constraints, which is just the class of the constraints we've added last week on our storyboards. We're going to maybe look a little bit at layout errors and warnings, but the midterm is going to be a great exercise in that. It's going to be a lot of noise. We're not going to do the last thing. We're going to just in general also try to do some creating buttons, labels, table views, everything in code, because it's all very similar, but like everything has like, sometimes you want to use a specific initializer for each thing. So I'm going to be doing that, and if we have time, we might look at enums, which we've been using, the thing that says, for instance, in this layout relation dot equal, that's an enum. Although we were doing that today, we've definitely used it before. And in combination with that, a switch statement, which is very similar to if-else statements, but a little bit nicer to look at. Before we start with today's class, I would love to take a look at the homework. How do you guys feel generally about it? What was hard and what was easy about it? Was the all layout stuff the hardest part or the easiest part? Was the delegation the hardest part? Just as a general, like for me, what was hard and what was easy? Yeah, that's fair. I think all layout is pretty easy, especially the basics. I might today talk also a little bit about like edge cases in our layout. For instance, if you, and that's something you're gonna wanna, thanks previous person. If you have your screen and you wanna have three areas that have the same width exactly, spanning the full screen, that's, for instance, something that is a little bit harder to do. But basically, the example I just showed was that, right? It was started with 1, then 2, then 3, and so on, and it created areas for each item, and they all have the same height, right? So if we start with 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's basically that. This is in code, though. We might look at storyboard, but there's definitely some tips I can give. But yeah, all layout is not the hardest thing.
The delegates example was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like that.
Did it start to make sense? Like,
Yeah, it definitely made more sense.
Yeah.
With that example, it kind of came together before it was kind of abstract.
yeah.
It definitely came together.
The whole like cool thing. I mean, the whole purpose of like, for instance, the thing in homework was that your model that is containing your data only lives in your table view controller or in your view controller or your table. And that add student screen doesn't need to know anything about your model. It doesn't need to know about any of your data necessarily. It just passes back a name and email, and that's it. That's the only thing it should care about. It's really about like splitting up responsibilities here and there. All right, cool. I do want to go over notifications though, because everybody seemed to have skipped that for some reason. Homework's been graded. Andre also pushed your grades up to GitHub with the notifications included because nobody did it, but I'm going to go over it. Nobody did it, literally, apparently. But I'm going to go over it today again because there's really nothing hard about it. So maybe just by seeing it one more time.
I just didn't have time to.
No, that's fair. It was a pretty long homework, and I mean, you didn't have to write a lot of code, I think, because like the first screens almost were no code, but it's fair that there was a lot. So basically, these two screens, we want to make them like all the views on here orange if you click that button in the add student screen, which is very randomly placed in a completely different screen. So when I click make it all orange here, I want everything to be orange when I go back. Right now, I deleted that code, so, well, yeah, I deleted it, so it's not happening anymore. So I have my function here that reacts to my button click. Does anyone want to guess what we do? How do we? So at this point, when you click that make it all orange button, what do we want to do? Post a notification or add an observer? Exactly, right? At this moment, we want to post a notification to everyone who's interested to make whatever. In this case, make your views orange on your screen. So do you want to remember how to do that? And what do we call the notification center methods? So NS notification center, default center, right? And then, does anyone remember the method? Add observer is to listen for notifications. What? Exactly, post notification. And we don't really care about user info, right? This is useful when we want to pass data. In this case, we don't want to pass data, we just want stuff to be orange. So I'm going to use this one that allows us to pass a name, which is going to be a string, and an object, which is going to be nil. So for the name, it needs to be a string, and to avoid typos, I created a constant outside of my class, so it's accessible everywhere, called Orangify. And it's this thing in code in general, and Swift is maybe an exception to that. When something is like constant that is accessible everywhere, we capitalize everything. But it really doesn't matter. It's like a thing that a lot of developers will recognize. And so object nil. So that's all there is. And what you care about at this point is that your application doesn't crash. If it doesn't crash, you did a good job, probably. I don't care if, I'm not going to worry about making it actually orange already, but if I click this, it doesn't crash, so I'm in a good place at this moment. So then I need to go to my second view controller and first view controller. And I actually have it here, so right, so let's go to second view controller. So NS notification center, default center, and then what? How do we listen for a notification? Add observer, right? Add observer, and we want to have this one with a selector, a name, and an object. So add observer. Does anyone remember what the observer is? Exactly, it's us itself. Selector. What is the selector again? Of what? No, this is the function that we want to execute. I forgot to delete it, but that's fine. So it's here, make orange. String, the name is exactly Orangify, so that's where the syncing happens, and object's nil again. And that's it, that's all there is to it. And then I have this function that just sets the background colors of the views all to be orange. Make it all orange. So if I go back now, they're all orange.
In the solution that I put up in your homeworks, it has it like how you did an example last class where actually you access the notification and it's a key pair, UI color orange, and then you set that to the value.
Yeah.
So a little bit more advanced, but you can have both versions.
Does it make sense what happened here? So you add an observer, which will listen for this Orangify notification, which was Orangify or something. And every time that happens or gets sent out, you call the function make orange, and all that does, I have my outlets already set up. Change the background color for each of these 4 views, and that's it.
And you do that for every single view.
Well, in this case, you only had to do it for the first 2. So here you would do the same thing. In view.load, to NS notification center, default center, add observer, self selector, make orange, name Orangify, and object nil. And remember, if you pass in a colon after the selector name, you actually get a notification here. So I can also do this. In this case, there's really no use case for it though, but you can add in a colon here, and then you get access to the notification doing this. If you use user info, you need this because there's this object on notification. If let info equals notification.user info, and you see how it's an optional. So you want to do this in an optional binding. So if it's not there, you don't crash your application. So in there, you have access to your user info. But again, in this case, we're not using user info, so there's no real reason you would have to pass in this notification or this colon to have access to the notification.
Why did you use not? Alert not again?
Oh, you can call that whatever you want, right?
I was just curious, was it a
Notification.
some type of project for okay, sure.
Yeah. That's a long thing to type.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't in there talking.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, right? Just the important thing is that it's of type and it's notification. Cool. You want me to go over scroll views again? Because I feel like that was also not the easiest thing. Yeah? All right. So scroll views is all code, right? All storyboard, I'm sorry. So let me delete everything from my scroll view.
On this, I have these grid lines
Mhm.
that basically creates a margin of every side, so I can drag it to the full screen.
Wait, you can't what?
Somehow I have grid lines.
Red lines?
Grid line.
Oh, grid lines?
Yeah, I don't
Never
know.
seen that. I'm very interested to see that. I will take a look in a second. So you couldn't drag anything out?
I just couldn't drag it to the full screen.
So the margins on the side.
Interesting. Not really sure that I understand what you mean, but
The 20-point left and right margins, that's automatic.
but that shouldn't prevent you from dragging anything out, though. Anyway, I'll take a look in a bit. So to start, we have something like this, right? A view controller, 600 by 600 points. We want to have a full screen scroll view in this case, so I can already set that up. I'm just gonna drag it like this first, and then with the pin tool, I'm gonna set it to be 0, 0, 0, 0, right? That's pretty obvious. I think that's the easiest step in making an actual scroll view. So that's good. I don't have any errors. The thing is with scroll views, you're gonna have to get used to the fact that you'll have yellow or red errors, all layout issues until you're done. And that sucks, but if you're like keeping track of all the steps that you have to do and you're doing them correctly, you also know that they will be fixed the moment you reach your endpoint. So the next thing we need to do is always put everything in one child, right? So we will have one UI view that will be our content view, and that will be the actual view that will scroll in the scroll view. So I'm gonna drop this in here. And I like to, and I really don't do that for you guys, I always give these things background colors as I'm developing, because you at least have some reference to see what's happening then. So I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna try to do a little bit of different order. I generally also always want this to be 0, 0, 0 to each side, because you want your scroll view, if you scroll to the complete bottom, you don't want any gaps in between there. So let's actually, I last time waited with that a little bit longer, so let's actually set that up, 0, 0, 0, 0. Now, the key to scroll views is that this view needs to be able to calculate its own width and height, and it can't at the moment. So it says, how do you mean needs? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Scroll view. That's fine. It needs to be able to calculate its own content height and content width. Now, the content width is the easiest one. We can just set the content width of our content view equal to the width of our view, not to the scroll view, because it cannot rely on scroll view to calculate all its dimensions. So we set equal widths between content view and view. So that's the first thing I need to do. So I'm going to drag from here to here saying equal widths. Let's take a look. All right, we already have one less issue. So now we're in business as usual. There's nothing in here. It's just, except for the last thing we need to do, it's just like we would work all the time. You will set constraints to constrain stuff in an X position and a Y position. So should I just work with squares for now? Just big UI views, colors or something?
You can just work through the homework exercise.
Well, that was big, like colorful.
Yeah, like 3 blocks.
Yeah.
A small one.
Yep. So that's actually an easy example, or not easy, but like you give a UI view fixed height, right? So this should be pretty straightforward, because your content view will just be the addition of the heights of your 3 views, basically, right? If you have a view of 100 pixels, another one of 1,000, and another one of 100, your content view is going to be 1,200 in height. Where that is not always the case if you have a big paragraph, like I said, when you turn it to mobile, the height of that paragraph is a little bit less high in mobile than it is in portrait. Mobile landscape, I mean. So let me actually, I told you I usually set color, so let's do that. I'm going to give this content view a bright yellow background. So I don't know how much it was exactly, but let's just 20 or something. I'm going to do 60. I like 60. Beautiful number. So first thing first, I just gave it a left, top, and right constraint and a fixed height of 60, right? So that's more than enough for the for that view to calculate its own properties. It knows its width, its height, and its position. So a bunch of errors, all fine. Now let's start with, or let's continue with the second one. And you can just 0, 0, 0. And let's, this was the very large one, but I already know that it's easiest if I don't go over my 600 pixels at the moment. Otherwise, I have to change this to freeform again. So for now, I can just make it like, for instance, 100, and then do the last one, and then I can increase the middle one to be like 1,000 or something. And then once your constraints are good, you can change all the constraints, and it's not going to break anymore if you don't delete any. So I'm going to set it to be height of 300 right now, but I'm going to increase this to 1,000 or something. So 0 to the top, 0 to the left, 0 to the right, and a height of 300 for now, fixed height. So add 4 constraints. It's going to say, well, but you said I should be 0 from the top, and you're now 0 from the right, and now you're 360 from the right. Also, you can clearly see that it expects to be higher. So the only thing you need to do here is only for this view. So make sure you select this one and not this one, because otherwise it will do all of them. You update frames. And then you'll see we get the expected result. So those constraints are good too. And now just the last one. And that is where the, see, if you see this, by the way, it means that I am overlapping by 1 point on the blue one. So now it's giving this 299, and that is to this one. You don't want this. It needs to be 0. And if you would manually set it to 0 right now, it would be 0 to this one. So if anything, you would rather have a tiny gap in between there and just change it now to 0, because now it's at least to the correct one. 0, 0. Let's do for this one, height of 100. So this is what we did for all the other two, right? But this is where the like crucial part is. This needs to constrain to the bottom because it's the last object in the scroll view, and that is how the scroll view would know its height. It starts here and it has to go all the way to 0 to the bottom from this part. So I need to set this one too and set it to 0. And you see how I went from red to yellow? Now it's just update frames issues because it's not aligning correctly with what I said. So I actually now can choose update frames and see how this like switched a little bit. This probably used to go to the bottom and now it only goes here. Because right now my height is what, 460 or something. In general, it's not high enough for my thing. But that's actually fine because now it worked really well. And I can do something as easy now. If I want this middle one to be higher, if I go to this height equals 300, I just set this to be like, I don't know, 1000. And if I run now, that's it. That's all I had to do. So it's just the key that everything in the content view needs to have enough information on it so the content view can calculate its own height. And you don't do anything different than you would normally. The only key is that for the last one, you have to set a bottom constraint to the bottom of the content view, and that's it. And right now, we have a beautiful scrolling scroll view. And so for the last one, so the last one is definitely off screen, so you can't see it. You could, if you, I showed this last time, if you select your view controller, and by default this is fixed under your ruler, you change this to freeform, and you set the height to like something crazy like 1500 or something. You see, now you have some extra space, but this is just for storyboards. It doesn't influence your code at runtime or anything. Let's say you want to have a gap at the bottom. You would do something like bottom space to super view, for instance, 60. And now you'll see that we have some padding at the bottom. So in some cases you want that in your applications because you don't want the bottom of the scroll view. Imagine that this is a button. This last item you don't want that to stick to the bottom necessarily. So you would want like some padding here. So sometimes you don't want that last part to be 0. You want it to be 60, for instance. Cool. That's all there is to it. I posted a video after class on Wednesday that explains this thing using Sketch and just some dragging and dropping. So it might help if you're stuck at some point trying this yourself.
If you're recording, I think this was the best.
Okay, yeah, I am definitely recording, so yes.
Does it recording last?
Does it? Yeah. It goes to YouTube.
It's
After
gonna be there for a while.
it will forever. I mean, unless if YouTube closes down or I suddenly want my voice taken off YouTube, but I don't think I will at some point. Yeah, it's gonna be there for a while. So that was the homework. I think the other exercises were very simple. Left and top 0, 0, right and top 0, 0, bottom and right 0, 0, left and bottom 0, 0, and then width and height of 20 points each. So that should have been easy. Here you had 2 options. Either these things are equal width to the view, but I like to do 0, 0, 0, and then like height of 10 or something. I think that's the easiest way. And then did everyone find this one? So what I did that is the 4th one, I think. So there's plenty of ways of doing this. I keep track of Boolean is green, which I set to true by default. And every time you click the button, you can inverse a Boolean just by putting an exclamation mark before it. So this will go from true to false, true to false, true to false. And then all I do if it's green, 2 possible options. You can create an outlet to your button and then change background color there, but you get it always passed along as the argument when you click on the button. So all I do is center.background color, which is that same button you just clicked, so that works too. Does that make sense? Every time you click a button, you automatically get it passed as an argument as the sender, but all the sender is actually button. So you can actually also change that code to button that was tapped. And then of course, you need to right? Does that make more sense? Instead of sender, I explained this, I think, a while ago. Cool? All right.
When you define your own color, it's a metric color, basically. Mine is just always transparent, or like there's no color.
How do you create your own color?
You just define like red, blue, and then there's.
So this is the like right way to create a color?
Alpha.
Yes, so if you set that to 1, it's not going to be opaque at all. Let's do something. Let's actually, I have something somewhere. Let's just create or get a green here. Open up zip. Come on, boys. There we go. I'm just going to pick a color here. See how it like shows the hex code? So now I'm going to do some magic, and this is UI color, right? So this is what we want, right? UI color, a red, a green. So these has to be numbers between 0 and 1. And then right now, alpha is 1. So if I run this, you'll see that you just have the same color that I just picked from my background. Yes, SIP is the application I use to do like, maybe, I think so. And you can actually set SIP to immediately copy an UI color. So every time it gets a color, it will copy the UI color value to your keyboard, to your pasteboard. But I have this thing in Alfred, so it's easy for me to convert it anyway. And I do a lot of CSS work, so then I want the hex value. So right now, right, it's the darker green, like my rice fields. And if I would change this to 0.5, you'll see that it's half transparent. So there will be some white of the background coming through. See? That's the white of the background coming through.
For some reason, mine is just
It's also very weird. You've been doing a lot of weird things today. I heard things that I've never seen before. We can take a look at it in a bit. All right. And actually, before we even start, I think I forgot to push something up. I have a starter project right here that you guys need to pull. We're not going to need it like right this second, but just in general. Lessons. No, what is this? MOB1? No, that's lesson 12. Let me actually push this to GitHub. Here you go. So if you pull, you'll have that. But for some slides. So why draw in code? So we're going to do everything in code today. Your storyboard is always going to be empty or empty. For the code along, we're going to start with one view on the storyboards, and then we'll add some stuff in code. I do not agree with the first line, but that was in the slides. It says adding many subviews and interface building can be unwieldy, wildly. I don't know what it means, but it doesn't sound good. Well, believe me, you'll see today, if you do them all in code, you'll end up with a lot of code. So I'd rather have a very busy storyboard than I do 800 lines of code. That second one is very fair. Managing storyboards and nibs when collaborating together is hard. So your storyboard basically is just a big XML file. So it's a code file. You can actually take a look at it. If we open up something here. No. Yeah. I have nothing open, of course. Let's take a look at homework, and you'll see very quickly how crazy this is. If you do open as, so by default it's interface builder storyboard. If you do source code, this is your storyboard. So it's just a bunch of XML nodes. The thing is though, if you work with a team of developers in a storyboard and you both change things, you'll end up with merge conflicts, which you guys have not had to deal with yet. But believe me, even in a normal code file, they're not fun. But if you have to figure out in this file who did what and what is the correct thing and what you want to keep, you don't want to go there. So storyboards are really hard if you work together with someone else. So most of the time what we would do is only one person touches a storyboard, so you cannot have merge conflicts. But of course, that's very hard to maintain in an organization where 80 people are working on an iOS app, for instance. So it's a challenge. So I do agree with the second one. Sometimes you also just want to create or destroy views when action happens. Like just like the example I showed you, every time you click a button, you want to add a view. I mean, there's no real it's not an App Store app. There's no real use in the application I showed you as an example, but there's definitely examples where you have X amount of views you need to create, and you don't know the amount of views beforehand, so you have to do it in code. And then some people prefer laying out code to keep all view logic in one place, and some people just don't like storyboards, and there's a lot of people out there that don't like storyboards, and I guess that's their choice. I don't know what to say to that. So in general, all our views have frames, right? We talked about CG Rect for a little bit. Today we're going to actually work with it. But even with our storyboards and all layout, we don't set frames directly anymore. So you remember, before we started using all layout, when we added a label to the screen, in our size expector, we would see, for instance, X of 10, Y of 20, width of 66, and height of 33, right? So that would be a frame, CG Rect with X10, Y20, and so on. But we don't do that directly anymore now. We just create a bunch of rules that calculates those frames for us. So that's what all layout is about. We say you need to be the same width as your super view. So if the super view changes, it will update the frame to the right values. So that's what all layout basically has been doing for us. So we'll do both today in code. We'll very briefly show you the CG Rect way of doing things, but that's a step back, so I'm quickly going to move away from that and go to all layout in code. Fair warning, all layout in code is a lot of lines of code for very little things to get back from it. And there's definitely solutions for that, which we'll talk about later on in this course. There's libraries you can use to make your life easier, but today we're not going to make our lives easier. All right. Before I jump into the code, there's a couple of really important options or methods we're going to use. We're going to use this one a lot. Every time we create a new view in code, we want to add it to the screen. So you can do super view, which would be your view controller's view most of the time, add sub view, and then the view you just created. Then set X and Y width and height by creating frames or CG Rects. So you would do sum view.frame equals CG Rect, and then X10, Y20, width 66, height 33. And so this is not all layout. I also don't agree with this one, maybe, but I don't think so. You want everything to be within the rules of your owl layout generally. So let's do some very basic examples. I'm going to do programmatic views introduction. So this is, I'm going to start with the frame way of doing things, but we're only going to do that for a little bit. So solutions, new folder, lesson 12. All right, so we're not going to touch our storyboard, so we're going to jump straight into view controller. And this is where our view.load function is going to become our best friend again. So you could basically do everything within your view.load function, but that's going to also get really cluttered. So I like to create functions for each element I want to create. So I'm going to create a function, create label, and then just do func create label. So if you would have multiple things, you just call all the functions to create it in your view.load, so you at least have a very quick overview of all the things you're creating in code. UI label is probably one of the easiest elements we can create because it doesn't have any user interaction. It doesn't do anything crazy. So I'm going to do let label. And just like we've been creating animal classes, stuff like that, you just create an instance of a UI label. So this happens behind the scenes in storyboards all the time. Just do it for us. But today we're just going to see how that all actually works, I guess. So when working with programmatic views, it's always useful to have background colors, I think. So I'm going to do, and then you can delete those the moment you're sure that it's laid out in the way you want to, but in this case, I'm just going to set a background color for development. So we need a frame, so we actually make it visible on the screen. So CGRect make is the function we use to create a CGRect. And so as you see, it just takes an X, a Y, a width, nothing crazy. So I want this to be at 30 and 30. I'm going to start with a width of 100, but this is where the guessing starts. If your label is longer than that, this 100 is not going to be enough. I'm going to show that in a bit. And a height, I think labels technically with 35 points have enough of a height. Now, what is a label without text? I'm going to set the text property of the label to be hello. And there's one more thing I need to do. Does anyone want to guess? We saw the method just on the slides. We need to add it to the view hierarchy, right? So we created a label now, but we don't do anything. I mean, we do something with it. We set a background color, a frame, and a text property, but it's not on the screen yet. So we do view.addSubView label. Now this view property we have access to because we're in the UI view controller, and that is the top view from the storyboard. So remember how each view controller comes with a default view? That's this one. So you just do view, add subview, and whatever the view is you just created. Because UI label is a subclass of UI view, right? So if I run my code, we should see a very beautiful label at 3030. Right? It works, right? But see, this is where it becomes annoying. We gave it a width of 100 now, but that's too much. Obviously, it doesn't need as much. And then when I start writing a book in here, you'll actually see that it puts an ellipses behind it because you don't have enough space. So this is useless. This is just plain useless. It also, well, this still works. You can still rotate it, but it's not like we decided any rules right now. So this is just like we used to do in the first 5 weeks when we drag a label out to the storyboard. We would manually expand its width to have all the screen, or all the text be visible on the screen. Cool. I think I'm going to go over UI button too, because we don't have access to IB actions, right? So we need to be able to still listen to user interaction somehow. So I'm going to go over how we do that. Who wants to guess how to create a button? Louder? Exactly. UI button. Let's start. This is going to be a shit show, but let's start with this. UI button, just normal UI button. So I'm going to give it a background color, also blue color. And so this is where it gets a little bit interesting. We can still be dynamic. Also, I should probably not do this in the create label function. So I'm going to rename my function to say create UI. So it's not specific to a label. But technically, if you do create views programmatically, you would have a function for each element, because if we set up constraints, you can be pretty sure that it'll add 30 lines just for constraints in code. So I want my X to be the same, but my Y, I can make that depend on the label. So I can do, oops. No. I can do label.frame.y plus label.frame.height plus 20. So I take the top of the label, I add the label's height, and then I add another 20. So I mean, there's definitely some possibility to go a little bit crazy. And then I need to call this on origin. Yeah, all right, I got it. And so I'm going to give it a width of 80 and also a height of 35.
Yeah, so, okay. So would you always keep your, like, so you have create UI, and you have your label, your button, like, is that how you would normally do it?
No, so I would have a create label, a create button, because the moment we start going into real stuff, we add constraints, and we saw on Sunday or Saturday how much constraints are. So that's why I normally would split them up in.
That's what you're just saying,
Okay. Yeah, but in this case, I mean, I guess it's fine because we're doing the old way of just setting frames. Now, a button doesn't have a text property, it has a title property. And the way you set a title on a UI button properly is calling set title method on the button. And so I'm going to do something, and you need to pass it a state. Now, this is where enums come into place again. And if you hit return and you do period, you can see that all the different UI control states. So disabled, focused, normal, and selected, I think. So what this allows you to do is have a different title based on the user interaction. So I'm going to give it 2 titles. So I'm going to set this one to normal. And then I'm going to do button.setTitle. I'm selected. UI control state selected. So that gives you some flexibility, which is really nice. And then last thing I need to do is view.add subview button. Cool. So I'm basically saying you have two titles. So normal applies to everything. If I wouldn't add the second line, even when it's selected, it would just say do something. But if I create an extra title for UI control state selected, you override the normal state basically. So if I run this, you're gonna see some interesting stuff. Oh, it's not even doing anything. Wait, is it not selected? It's possible that it's not selected. Highlighted, sorry. See how the title changes? Now, first thing that is interesting is this text is white. Now, if you remember correctly from storyboards, all the buttons by default in iOS have this blue default bolded text. So why is this happening? Now, buttons have this initializer you can use, or you can set it afterwards, but buttons basically have a type. So if you look at UI button, and we look at the type property, button type, you'll see that you can set that to be of type UI button type. And if we click into that, which is an enum again, if I'm correct, yeah, we have a lot of types, well, not a lot. We have custom, system, detail disclosure, info light, info dark, and contact add. To be perfectly honest, not really sure what these do, but by default it goes to custom. And custom assumes nothing. So it doesn't give you any styling whatsoever. If we drag something out on the storyboards, by default it is a system button. So we want to make sure a button in this case is a system button. And if we go back to the UI button class, we can see that there should be a initializer. Oh yeah, so a convenience initializer, which means you don't need to use this one, but it's nice to have. So Apple created this for you. You create a button, passing in the button type. So if we go back to our code and we open up our parentheses, you'll see three initializers. We can also initialize everything with a frame, so you don't have to do this extra line, which I'll show in a bit. But we want to use this one, the type. So if I go down, this is an enum, so I'm gonna, so by default it's custom. I just want it to be system. If I run again now, we'll have the blue color that we're used to. Well, maybe I should change my background color because that's dumb right now. Right, so this is what we're used to seeing. See, and it still changes to I'm selected. Now, just like with the title, let's say you want to change this blue color, you want to use a method for that. And so with a label, you would just do something like this, right? Label.textColor equals UI color.green color. But buttons are interactive, so Apple gives you the ability to set a color based on the state of your button. So you would do button.setTitleColor. So I'm going to make a UI color.blue color by default. So for UI control state, normal, and then a other color for highlighted. So set title color, UI color dot. Is my highlighted? Oh, it's still yellow. So red color for UI control state. Yes, you can. I didn't want to confuse you guys. I almost did. So, but you can leave all these things out exactly. More on that when we talk about enums. But right now, what we'll see is we have a button that changes appearance based on interaction. So, how do you know these things? Very good question. You Google them, and you remember for next time. I mean, every UI kit thing has different properties you can set and update. And I can't go over all of them, but this is definitely an important one. And the last thing I want to show or add is I want to be able to interact based on user interaction, right? I want to do something. I mean, right now I just want to print something to the console, but with a storyboard, we just drag an action out to our controller or a view controller, but right now there's no storyboard. So how do we do that? if we look at UI button, we see that it subclasses UI control. Now UI control is basically the superclass of everything that is user interactable in iOS. So it's segmented control, which is like the 1, 2, 3 thing that you can switch between. Also subclasses from UI control. I'm not sure about UI text fields, but maybe it does too. UI text fields, yeah, also UI control. So basically, everything that the user interacts with, subclasses from UI control. Now, UI control has this method on it called add target, and that's how we are going to listen for touch or tap events. So I'm going to do add target. Who knows this one? Target. Who is the target? Self. We are going to listen to it. Selector. What is the selector again? The function you want to execute. Just like with notifications, when you do add observer, you pass in a selector, and that's the function you want to execute. So button tapped. Same thing, if you pass in a colon, it will actually pass the button that just got tapped. If you don't, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to pass in the button. And UI control events, who remembers what the normal tap is on iOS? Touch inside, exactly. So we're saying button, we want to listen for a touch up inside, and so we want to listen for a touch up inside. And once you get that, we want to execute button tapped. So obviously, I need to create a function now called button tapped. And because I passed in the colon, I am passing in the button that just got tapped. And that's it. So this is how you do everything in code, basically. So you can already see starting to add up, right? Like if you have a complex user interface, we have 9 lines of code just for a button, and there's no constraints yet. Wait till you see constraints. So right now, if I click this, hello from button. Oh, from button though. And just to reiterate on this property that we get passed in here, so this one, see? This is just the button, right? So if we do button dot background color equals UI color dot white color. Also, funny story, even for these, you can leave the first part out. You can just say period dot white color. This is just that same UI button that just got clicked, right? So if I tap this, suddenly our background color is white. Because that's just a button that gets passed that we just clicked. So if I update something on that property, it just updates on my screen. So that's what I did in the homework with ID action. Same thing. All right. Exciting stuff, no? I honestly like doing this, but who knows? Maybe people hate it. Are we good? Should I leave it up for a little bit? Okay. So while we're at it and we're waiting, table view, same thing, let table view equals UI table view. And you need to do some maybe more stuff here. It's been a while since I created this in code, but you're also setting a frame for it, CG rect to make. Let's say, I don't know, 100, no, 0. Y of 100, width of like, let's say, I don't know, 400, and height of 300. I don't know what I'm doing. We'll see. And then, of course, I'm not going to do it right now because I need to implement everything, but you would do this, right? Table view, data source equals self. And eventually, what you want to do is view.add subview table view. I'm not going to worry about these ones right now. Just take a look if my table view actually appears on my screen. I think it should. It might crash. Ah, see? So adding a table view in code, really no rocket science to it either. You need a frame, and then you would, of course, set your delegate and your data source and implement the right functions. That doesn't change anything. Creating a table view in code is a piece of cake. So see how instantiating objects, what we've been doing with animals in the beginning, is just all over iOS. You do it with just about anything. It's really a common thing to do. Cool.
You would use more of a storyboard or actually?
I like storyboards way more, but I mean, sometimes you have no choice. Like with the application I showed with the colors appearing, I don't even know, you can't do that in storyboard, right? The only hack I thought of that you could do is you could create a table view of that. And for cell, look at this. You could do, remember this UI table view delegate, right? And there was this function in delegate saying table view, right, for go at index path, right? Now assume your screen and assume you have a variable number of panes equals 0. And every time I click that add one button, you would increment this with 1, right? And you would do cell.tableview.reload data. And in here, you could do something like this. Return view.frame.height, which is your view controller's view, divided by number of panes. So if you have 1, it's going to be full screen. If you have 2, it's going to be half. If you have 3, it's going to be 33%. And if you keep doing that, it's actually going to have the same effect. And if you would disable scrolling on your table view, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That's not fun because you want to work with constraints and code. But this is a little hack I found on like the example I showed you earlier in class, how you might do it without writing a lot of code. But in general, there are always things where you cannot do what you want to do using storyboards. I mean, this is of course a dumb example because you can do everything we just did in storyboards. But we need to start somewhere.
So there's no way to have a storyboard that kind of speed up this kind of code.
Well, what we've been doing the whole time, right? Like last week we did everything in storyboards. How do you mean?
It doesn't actually have any coding, right? It's like, it doesn't, so when you need to drop something, it just only stays there. There's no code version that we can modify it.
Oh, no, that's not the thing. No. The only thing you could do is create an outlet to it and modify it there in your view controller. But the code file that gets generated is in this main of storyboards XML file I showed you earlier. So if you do, I mean, now there's nothing in it. So even without anything in it, it's already 27 lines of code. And if I add a button here, you'll actually see that button appear. So I'm just going to add it somewhere randomly. And if I now do open as source code, you'll see here, see? So this is the big UI view for my view controller. And it has a subview, it has subviews, and the first subview is a button. And then all these things, so fixed frame, yes, what we've been doing the entire time because we're not using all layout at this moment. Let's see, what else can we? So it creates a frame for us, X 145, Y 82, width 46, height 30. Set title for key, so title button for key normal. So I mean, this is pretty readable to some extent if it's limited in what is in there. But this is the only thing a storyboard creates, and I mean, you can change things in here, but good luck. I don't think you want to. Cool. Right. So that's basic UI views using frames and know all the layout. Now you guys get 25 minutes to create this. So you want to have a screen with a username and password fields, so text fields, a login button, and a label for the title at the top. And so when login is clicked, you just want to print a message. Bonus 1 is by default. Well, no, don't worry about bonus 1 if you want to. I mean, don't worry about the bonus things. I don't want to waste any time on that. You would just create a UI view and put everything within that UI view. So, I mean, remember how in storyboards you would put things in other views? There's nothing stopping you from doing that here, right? So you could do, oops. create wrapper. And you would create a variable up here, or container or something, is a new UI view. Container, right? And then you would just do view.add subview container. Container.frame equals cgdirect to make, let's say 0, 0, 400, and 600 or something. Container.background color equals UI color.purple color. So right now we should just see one big view, like I've been dragging out views. Oh, so it's creating container, and then this one should still say create UI. So it's first creating a container, and then it's creating all of our UI stuff. What is that? One view, and what is this thing? Oh, that's a table view. Sorry, yeah, so the table view. But the thing is, so we have a container view now, but we can, we can add everything in that container view, for instance. So instead of doing, when we do create UI, view.add subview, what you would do is container.add subview. So you can add views within views just the same way. So now you'll see that everything is in, well, not everything yet. If I do this, container. So right now, if I run again, everything is within my container. And if I now would change the y over container to be 300, you'll see that everything will shift with it, right? So that doesn't change. It's just like in storyboards. Oh, well, that button is from our storyboard. Remember, I dragged that one out in the storyboard to show you what a default button looks like. But so we have one big view container, and I added everything within the container. So if I make the y of the container lower, then everything's lower, right? So now normally we say view add subview if it's to the main view, but if you want to wrap things within other things, you can just keep adding stuff in other views. So that is what those bonuses to do are. Yes.
So for the create UI, you did a let label, and then there was under the function versus the
Yes. Because the reason why I did it like this is because I want to have access to that container in my create container function, but also in my create UI function. But for this label, right now I'm not using it anywhere, so I can just create it in here. There's no reason why you couldn't create it up there, but if you're not going to use it anywhere else, it's better to keep it in here. And to be honest, I all the time start here, and then if I later on notice that I do need it in other places, I would move it up. Because moving it up is very easy, right? You would just do our label equals UI label, and then there you go, and it's moved up.
Why that's hard to do that?
Well, okay, fair question. This should be left. But let's say you want to, I don't know, at some point overwrite it anywhere, then you would change it to a var. Cool? And so the reason why the most proper way of doing it would, no, I honestly think this is the most proper way. So you could make them optional and then create them in here, but I like this because you just create them immediately, and then in the functions itself, you just format them and add them to something, somewhere around that. Ignore the last 10 seconds. So that is what bonus 1 and bonus 2 are. You just put everything in a wrapper container view, and bonus 3, when the user logs in, another UI view with success message and a cancel button, which removes. There's not going to be any time for number 3, but start with these two. If you want to put them in a container wrapper, go for it. I don't really care because there's no rocket science happening anyway. But these two, so just fixed frame. So it doesn't need to be laid out beautifully. Just get your fingers used to typing UI code. Until 8, and then we're going to take a break, and then we can take a look at it afterwards if it's necessary. But I feel like it's pretty straightforward. Also, we're here for questions in the meantime. Let me see if I'm actually still recording. Might have shifted to my face again. Nope, from scratch. Oh, great.
It was not?
No, it was. So all the same things like we've seen so far. The only new thing is that you'll have to create text fields from scratch. But there's nothing very much different with the UI label, but you do have the opportunity to set a placeholder. Oh, yeah, I can do both.
I have it right here.
Yeah?
I have it.
Okay. Seeing that speed using Bitmode.
Yeah, I see it.
So,
Trying to see the best way to do this. They greater than right. But I guess it's all. And then artificial took it. And she wants to, I guess, revert back. So that she should changes without all the stuff that I did.
so she needs to pull your changes first.
You get a conflict.
Yeah, so I didn't commit all my code. So I created half the number, and then I tried to push my final.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. You need to pull first.
But I already created it.
That's fine. It's not gonna overwrite it.
So should I just save it somewhere else? Or?
No. Just go to GitHub for Mac and do sync. But wait. Add will be, oh, you have conflicts.
Yeah, I was trying to. I already tried to commit. Like my.
And I think you still have conflicts right now. Where does your stuff live?
Go back. Back to. And then. I don't think it's.
So there's merge conflicts. Oh, maybe okay. See, so this is what a merge conflict looks like.
Good to know.
So it's basically, yeah, it's saying this is version 1 until the equal sign, and this is version 2. Which one do you want to keep? So in this case, we want to keep both. I don't know, did we do this in class, this is valid email thing? Or did you just add that in?
No, we didn't.
So we want to keep both, so I just keep both version and get rid of all the special characters. So right now, oh, it's in the storyboard. Fuck. So, okay, let's see. Open that source code. See, oh,
Too much.
it's a lot. Well, it's only X and Y, so let's just keep that. I mean, there's no way to know. See, but it's just like a difference in like the frame each time. If two, you had one had 2 buttons and the other one make it orange button. Did you create that one?
Yeah, I did.
Let's just keep all of them. It's easier to delete it when the actual. So the moment we fix this, the storyboard is going to come out again.
Okay.
And then up here, I don't want to care. I only want to use one set of constraints. Same here. So right now, wait, this is basically
Oh,
recording
sorry.
it. Let's take a look at the actual storyboards. What happened?
What is it getting spit out into XML?
So we like fucked up some constraints here.
Yeah.
That's fine though. This should be, well, this is saved, so let's get rid of this one. I don't know what this is.
No, that was my message.
Oh, your error message, okay. So vertical spacing. There we go. So it might still crash right now because we deleted some stuff, and there might be outlets that were still there. You know what I mean, like outlets or this looks very good. So table view is there. Let's see. Oh, look at that. So I guess it worked.
Just to make orange, that's one.
Yeah, I think.
But it should have the code in there if you merge mine and yours. Well, you deleted my button. So.
Oh, I did? Yeah, it was hard to know which ones.
It's okay. It's
Except-
different
Yeah, but the
exercise
function's
out
there, so just.
So make it
Okay.
orange. So let's take a look.
I'll
Yeah, you'll do it. I mean, it's now as easy as just dragging this little circle to that button and it's done. There you go. I think if everything is all at work, and if it didn't, then it's up to you to figure it out.
The
But,
question that
yeah.
I had on the red
So you make it all orange. It didn't crash. That's already a good thing.
line. Yes, that's all. No, look, there's an orange in here.
Oh, it's only that. Your scroll view works. That's good. Let's go to full storyboard mode here and take a look. Oh.
See, there's this thing.
Interesting. I think this is for, you remember how we turned this on?
Yes.
Canvas.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out which
See, show layout rectangle. So now it's normal again. And
one. What was that?
editor, canvas, show layout rectangle starts this on and off. So I'm going to turn it off again. And so the reason why this is happening is, let's create this, or choose a scroll view here. We'll delete these. So this is the one right, left, trailing and leading. See, leading, trailing is here, right? What you did is constraint to margins. So if you do this 0, 0, 0, if you want it to be all the way to the left and right edge, you should check this off and do 0 and 0 here. And now do update frames. No, it's the thing. Remember the layout margins I talked about? I most of the time uncheck this box. If it's checked, it didn't ever really help me yet to keep it on. But that was the reason why you had the gap. So right now you have it.
What about the top?
So that's going to be probably the same thing. So I'm going to select the scroll view. See, top space to top layout margin. What you want to do is, if you select this again, new constraint to margins. Now it's going to say top space, top layout margin. I don't want it to be top. If you want to be 100% sure, just set drag from here to here and say vertical space to top layout. Why does it keep saying top layout? I don't know why it does that. What? What? Wait, there's a couple of things I think are going on right now. Okay, and now if we're going to set it to 0, it's going to be fine. So that's a good question too. I've had this when I had add table views into storyboards, so into view controllers, so not table view controls, normal table views into a UI view controller, and it would shift things down on my page for some reason. And apparently it's this Apple tries to help you with laying out your scroll view, and if you just select this or deselect adjust scroll view insets, that's fixed too. I read about this the other week online. I was like, why is this happening? And it's just this checkbox, so let's see what it says. A Boolean value that indicates whether the view controller should automatically adjust its scroll view inset. You don't want that. Well, sometimes it doesn't. You don't always have to check this off by default or anything. It's just when I see that something weird is going on and I check this off, it's just
Good to know. Thank you.
no problem. How's it going, guys? It's coming.
That's from the storyboards.
Who likes this and storyboards? I mean, it's not either or kind of question. It's most of the time you do this out of necessity when storyboards just are not cutting it at that moment. You see, layout or merge conflicts and storyboards are no fun.
No, not at all.
She just had something else that was crazy. One of the lines in her homework, one of the, it was some weird error she sent me, but essentially.
Oh, she sent it to me too. I couldn't. It was in the prepare for sec function, right?
Yeah. But when I Googled it, it was just like one of those weird Xcode buttons. So all I told her is just to comment out the line and then to type it. It's something to do with the auto complete. So that's sort of just write it over from getting without that.
It was 11:45 on Saturday, and I was not sober at that moment. But I was looking at it, and I was like, I'm 100% sure this line is correct.
Yeah.
So I didn't know.
Yeah.
Also, guys, if you're working with UI text fields, try to set a placeholder for them. So the placeholders are the default light gray text that you see in the text fields as an indicator to the user. So try to set that in code. It's just one line. You should be able to figure it out. So also don't worry about making this pretty because we're working with frames, so it's nearly impossible to make it look good.
What was the instructions? It was a login, password, and
A label and a button, and if you want to go crazy, an error message that appears. An error message, but that's if you're done with all the other things. So when a user logs in, add an logging by view with the success message, the cancel button, which removes that. You didn't see removing it, but it's just selecting your view and call the method remove from super view on. The code? Good. Created this fun button during office hours. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was this one. David asked me how you would create a real button field. I had so much fun playing with this.
Did you add shadows?
I have two views that you move down. Well, the label is just a default button label, and you move the label down using content edge insets. So you set that, you increase that by 3 for the top, and then you just move. So there's a background view, and you move it But I made it so that it's might be designable, so you can just select it here and override all the properties in code and the corner radius and stuff. So I had fun with that one.
What's the assignment?
Full 6 minutes, May. Go for it. Just try to get at least a label on your screen, so you've done it once. Something disappeared. What is that? Oh, you wait. Wait, 30. Oh, you've never had it.
Oh, okay.
If you forgot what to do, I can probably tell you what to do. So label two text fields, a button. I'm already happy if you get that, and then if you have that, you want to listen to the touch up inside on the button and show success message. So create another view, another button that deletes the success message, and then almost there.
text field doesn't work, right?
No, it does. You don't find it?
Oh.
Should I go over? The only thing I really want to cover is the success message and how to remove it again. I'm not going to create this whole thing, I think, because that seems like a waste of time. Do we want to take a break first, 10 minutes, and then, or do 5 minutes going over the solution and then break? I have no strong feeling for either. I feel like go over it now, then we can wrap this up and then move on to the break. Okay, so again, not going to go over creating the label, creating the text fields. The only thing that you that we didn't see yet is when you create a text field. I mean, there's really nothing different. The placeholder was this, right? Just placeholder equals email or something, right? So that's the only thing I didn't that is different than with the label. So I'm not going to go over that necessarily. But what I did want to talk about is the bonus that said, when the user logs in, add another UI view with the success message and a cancel button which removes the UI view. So I did that. So if I click this button, this is beautiful, right? It's just beautiful. Yes. The color combinations and stuff. So you successfully logged in, and then when I hit remove, it actually deletes that view and creates it from scratch every time. And how do you do that? Well, it's pretty straightforward, nothing super crazy. So this is the function that executes when the button got tapped. So I created a success message up here, which is just a generic UI view, which is going to be the container for everything else. So I set the background color to UI color green color. I give it a frame, and I add it to the container in my case, but whatever. Then I create a success label with text, a frame, and I add it into the success message, and that's important. And I create a cancel button, give it a frame, a title, and add target again, and I add it into the success message too. And when I click the button, I execute the function remove success, and all you do is success message dot remove from super view, which removes it. So every single, you could argue that this is done for the simple reason that the you're basically setting the background color to green every time you click it, but it's green from the beginning. So the right way of doing this would be to do this once in view.load. So in view.load, you create your entire container, and all you do in button tapped is container.add subview success message, and that should do it actually. You see what just happened? So we were creating the label. I think honestly, I did something really dumb now I think about it. Just retarded. No, that's exaggeration. Let me actually show you something while I try to figure this out. Oh, so remove, right? So this is smarter in a sense. So up here, we don't want to add it. So we in view.load, we create the container, format it, we create the label, we format it, and we create a cancel button, format it. And every time you click that button, we just show it on the, or we add it to the screen and remove it from the screen again. Because what I was doing is actually, every time I clicked that button, I created a new label and added it again. So I actually ended up with 5 labels on top of each other just before this. And that brings me to and let's actually bring it back to what it was. I'm going to revert it back to the right way after that. But I can prove that to you. So same thing, but right now, if I do this a couple of times, Xcode has this really cool thing to do your view debugging. You can go while your application is running to debug, view debugging, and then you capture view hierarchy. It's going to create a 3D outline. Well, but let me actually now, it was off screen. It's just really cool, right? So blah, 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 twice, 3 times, and now I'm going to do it. So debug, view debugging, capture view hierarchy. Ha, see? So dumb of me. But you can actually clearly see right now that I had, and you can even like change the spacing in between these elements. So cool. So this really helps when sometimes you can't find something on your screen. Just use this view and see this clearly showing that I was doing something really dumb. So in view.load, you would create another function that is like set up success message, and that success message is kept up top under the var success message. So and all you do when you click that button is add it to the view, and when you click the cancel button, remove it from the view, and you only set it up once. That's the key. So this is what I'm doing wrong here. While your app is running, go to debug, view debugging, and capture view hierarchy. Fair warning, if I try to go back to my app right now, it's stuck. So once you do that, you stop execution of your application. If you want to continue, you just hit back here and rerun your application. Cool?
So when you have all of those set up in separate functions,
yeah,
and you then want to interact with it, you would have to create the view at the, what do you call it again, a constant at the top first. That's message. Yeah, could be a constant. Yes.
Because you want to add it in one function, remove it in another, so you need it to be. But again, for instance, this cancel button, it's not necessary at all, right? Just add it. I add it up here, so it's always shown and hidden when you add and remove. And this remove success function, you even have access to it. If you would pass in the colon again, you would be able to access it here, but there's no, I mean, I don't need it here, but let's say you want to do something funky here, you can do it like that. So I don't want you to automatically default to declaring everything on a class level basis, because that's not necessary at all. It will result in like confusing code because everything is up there, so everything is like globally accessible when it doesn't need to be. So if I read your code, I would be like, why is all of this up here and not just within a function?
So like one of the things I was just looking at for this quick assignment was you click the submit button and showing the label until it's hidden first and then it shows, but having that in the button actually, you know what I mean? So I have my label, which is in one function because I designed it there, but I want the button to unhide it.
Yeah, then you need to declare it at the top. I want you to default to not declaring it up top, and if you see that you need it, it's so easy to fix that. So don't create everything by default on top. It's going to result in messy code and just sloppy quality. I am very much against sloppy quality. And now we have a 10-minute break. And after the break, we're going to do layout constraints. Warm up your fingers during the break because we're going to be typing a lot. So like 8:20-ish, if you all feel like coming back earlier, we can start earlier. We're going to also talk very little bit today about animation. We're going to animate some constraints, which is really nice. Super easy, by the way. One thing I want to show, so we do this add subview. You can also do container.insert subview, above another view, below another view, and add an index. If you always want it to be the bottom one, always add index 0. So the next one that does that goes one lower again. So if you want to put some, well, in this case, this is code execution, right? The function that gets executed first and adds a subview will be on top. The function that executes after that will be on top again. Yes, will be on top again. I had to think about that for a second. If you want to have your say in that, you can use this insert subview, which would just still be bottom above subview label, for instance, or below subview label. So you can actually have your say in where they are added in the hierarchy. We'll see that when we do the example with all the boxes. There we need to explicitly say that. Did everyone by the way fill out midterm surveys mid-class? Yes?
Yeah.
Cool. Then it's probably Neil and Eric that did it.
To hit you up.
No, Phil did.
Oh.
I think there are 2 or 3 missing.
So that's like a font specimen. Font specimen? Yeah, just like a HTML font specimen. It's cool. Yeah, it's real cool.
Did you see the new website for the Air Force, airforce.com? It's insanely nice. They did a great job, man. It's Media Monks. They're a huge agency. They're in Dubai, London, Amsterdam, New York, Los Angeles. They're huge, but they create high quality.
So they got a company out of Dubai to build the United States Air Force?
No, they're also in the US. They're all over the world.
This is treason.
I fill this out and I'm gonna get drafted.
Yes. They are going to pick you up at your house and there's no going back anymore.
No, that's true. I got picked up from my house and taken to the recruiting office.
Really?
Yeah, they do that. They'll come get you. And then drop it. It's a lot of videos. It's like your guys' website.
It's pretty smooth though. And also they have like the coolest content to make videos off, you know what I mean? Like
That's true.
it doesn't
Fighter
get much
jets.
cooler than fighter jets in like jumping out of airplanes. I was really impressed by it. You should check them out, Medium ones. They're pretty big. They create cool stuff. All the loading effects were like small effects. It's surprisingly smooth for so much imagery and videos too.
Let's see what they put this with. Modernizer, Require JS, TweenMax. Have you used TweenMax?
Oh, I haven't, but that makes sense.
Yeah. Regular expression, X or regex. jQuery.
I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, TweenMax is really nice.
Have you used it?
And I was about to start using that.
I mean, I started using it in Flash times, but with GreenSock, it's GreenSock, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah. Tweetlight and TweenMax in ActionScript. Those are amazing, man. Been there.
I did everything else except notification.
Did you push it?
I know, because
Push it up now, Aging.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll push whatever I have.
Always just push whatever you have. You don't get it. Like it's for your feedback. You know what I mean? It's not like you get a 90% free or whatever. Like you don't really. Yeah, you don't have to write the second.
Like I want to give a shout out to the chat.
Yeah.
So actually, let's try to buy a contract. And actually, I've been through so much this week. I was gonna quit my job, but yesterday all day I spent trying to go see a condo, and I actually showed an offer today. So I'm very good. I was thinking about getting my job for the whole year.
Wow.
I told everyone, including my boss, that he was expecting, but he was like, wait, you quit already? No, so my boss has been telling me for the last 3 months consistently, like, I understand if you quit, but I don't want you to quit. That's what he said. But he said he will understand if I leave. So I've been back and forth whether I should quit or stay. I was very certain about quitting, but a lot of change just happened like last week or so. We formed a structuring of the company in a way that actually made me want to stay. So I've been because of that, I've been like so like not like couldn't focus on anything else. I was thinking about should I finish it? Now I keep thinking I should change my mind.
Decisions more important than Swift.
I'm serious. Sorry. But today, I stayed this, I didn't make it this morning, but then I went to work this morning, and I was so happy to be there for what I was. So I was like, you know, before I change my mind, just let me tell my boss. I told him I'm staying. It's done, I'm staying, so I'm not kidding. But all that, and it wasn't like this, who was meant to, like, when
Well, I mean,
I was just
in perspective.
yeah, I was going through a life crisis and I'm serious.
No, but this is perfect teamwork. Even though I didn't do notifications, still took me 3 times the time that I usually do.
Homework, but it wasn't it good? It was like everything we did in the past 3 weeks still.
Yeah,
It was everything. I like that. That's why I reviewed it, because it was not like
I just great homework all day. Actually, yeah, on Mondays, that's all I do. I just great. I don't do any work.
very grateful for that.
Yeah, so yeah, can be free to do other things.
It seems so simple at first.
No, the thing is, like, I
Yeah,
have to
like
do
we're
it
in
so I
this
can
scroll
understand what I'm reading.
Until
Yeah.
you just showed it that way, I'm like, oh, yeah, that just makes
It just the moment it clicks, it is like, but that's like with a lot of things in iOS. Once you get it, you're not going to forget how it works.
Yeah.
And scroll views are very hard to explain just in general. Like,
When you say once we get it, we're not going to forget.
no, you're not going to forget it. Like once you get the concept of a lot of things, like on layout, same thing. Like in the beginning, your midterm, you're doing right, but like once you get it, and you like you start to thinking constraints even before you have to create them. And that's like when
No,
the good
it's true.
stuff happens.
Yes.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I wish I could make iOS apps every day. All day.
Yeah, I think it's more fun than web stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%. My dream is just to like work remotely from anywhere I want making iOS apps. My own or for a company, and I can just like travel everywhere I want making iOS apps. It's just a fucking dream. It doesn't get any better than that.
When you start that, as I can do it.
I had this coworker who went to Treehouse from my company. They have 4-day work weeks, so they're paid full time like anyone else, but Fridays are a day off. They never had her. Yeah, you know her. Yeah. And so she's a designer there, and she works remotely. So she started traveling through the United States, and now in Seattle, I think.
Is there a design class here?
Yep.
We should partner up so we can make our final project.
You have a designer teaching you class. I can show you what we did last time. I showed it this week. Oh, I showed you, right? So like we can make cool stuff.
Yeah,
We can make.
I know there's more to that workshop.
You're like, yeah, so.
Yeah, we're like, we're definitely.
It's a lot though. I just remember it was just so much.
So yeah, I remember teaching it.
But it gave us all the code, so you can go ahead and break through and like look through it, peel off your own. But I know.
The thing is, once you start creating cool stuff, it's hundreds of lines of code for even like a small little application. I mean,
What are the
so-
requirements for the final project? Can we just make something really simple that we
yeah. I don't care what you do. If it has all layout, preferably some networking with an API, and that's it. All I care about.
But you're gonna realize that it is gonna be simple. By that time, everything is gonna be simple.
There's no such thing as
I mean, as far as
Learning
like
it the hard way.
simple as in what you want, your understanding. You're like, oh yeah, I need a UI table view, I want to put my data this way, blah blah blah. And then when you're done, it's like a super complex thing, but in your mind, because you understand it, it's just like, oh yeah.
You said you did a food tracking app or something like that?
And trust me, when I started, I was blowing him up, and I was trying to tell you, I was like, I have no idea.
You know what we're gonna do the moment we start talking about the midterm, which is gonna be like in a week or 2, 3. You can show what you did. So if you want to start preparing by updating it to Swift 2.0, that would be great.
Yeah.
And I mean, so many people did different things, and it's really up to you guys. I'd rather have you something making simple, make something less complicated and feel great while presenting it. And at the end of this class, rather than like trying to move the world, which, let's be honest, nobody's going to do, and create the next super app because you don't have the time for that in this 2 or 3 weeks that you'll have to commit to, for the final, and be disappointed afterwards. It's really important to set expectations and not dream of the next big thing for this final project. All right. Yeah, that's not saying you can't make anything cool, but it's not going to be polished to the level where you want to submit it to the App Store, probably, unless you have a lot of time on your hands or you don't sleep, which I don't know about you guys, but I like to sleep a lot.
After we finish with this class,
Yeah.
If we keep refining what we built,
Yeah.
you guys do there too.
I'm still here. I still have all my Slack channels of all my previous classes. I'm not going anywhere. You can still ask me questions. All right, so what we just did, all good, but it's useless and we're never going to do this again. I just wanted to do it so you had some background first about how to create stuff programmatically, and now you can worry about how to apply all layout to that. So that doesn't change. You do super view, adds up view, some other view. Now, what does change is, and this line is wrong, so let me immediately correct that line, is we need to do something by default. And I can talk about the why, but I also don't know 100%, but let me try. Translate auto resize, what is it? Translate auto resizing mask into constraints equals false. So for each view, we're now going to create, so whether that is a label, a button, a text field, a UI view, you would do label.translate auto resizing mask into constraints equals false. Because if you do not, it is relying on the old way of laying things out called springs and struts. I mentioned it for 10 seconds the other day while introducing auto layout. So if we want to use the new way of doing things, which is auto layout, we need to just do this line by default. It's just something you'll have to get used to, and that's going to become habit. And so the layouts we've been, the constraints that we're going to add are going to be of type NS layout constraints. So just like last time, it doesn't change anything. They have a from attribute to attribute, relationship. So most of the time, going to be equal. If you remember from last week, they have a multiplier and they have a constant. Remember this from last week? So from my button to my view, the top and the top is equal. Multiplier 1.0, constant 20 would be 20 points from the top. So you're going to still do the same thing. So conceptually, nothing is going to change. You're going to all do it in code. What is the hard part about that? Like I said last week, Interface Builder is pretty good at giving you information when your constraints are wrong. We haven't really maybe not gotten to that situation yet where we do a lot of constraints and something's fucked. This will only tell you when you run your application, you're going to see a vomit of information into your console. And it will list all the constraints you have. It's just going to say, probably something is wrong with these, and you figure out what it is. So it's not fun to fix if we mess things up. But important nonetheless. So let's start. This is how you add one constraint. Now, if you remember, we for each element easily have at least 2, sometimes 3 or 4 constraints. So this block 4 times. So we're going to do a lot of typing. But we can copy and paste stuff pretty easily. So I'm going to work in the same project, but I am going to just create a new code file. Cocoa Touch class, UI view controller, programmatic, auto layout. And the only thing I need to do, because we don't really do anything with the storyboard, is open as interface builder. Can delete this one too. I'm just going to change the superclass or the subclass here from view controller to programmatic auto layout view controller. So my new view controller is a file that gets executed. If you at home want to see the old file, you just would, of course, type view controller and then the other code would run by default. That's a very long name for a view controller, but whatever. So No. There we go. Can get rid of all this stuff. And start with, I don't know what we're gonna do, just some basic UI view stuff. Let's actually start with putting a, so like in the homework, that bar on the top of the first view control. Remember it had two bars, one at the top, one at the bottom, each 10 points high, so I'm just gonna do the top one. So create top bar. I am gonna work in different functions now because we'll be writing way more code. So func create top bar. How do we create a UI view? Yeah, so I'm going to call it V because it's very expressive. Probably not the thing you would want to do in a real application, but you would call it top bar or something. But for now, I'll be doing a lot of typing today. So if you create a view and you use constraints, by default, this equals false. It's just something you have to do by default. It should be the next thing you think about when you create a view and you want to add constraints. I'm going to give it a background color. I'm going to do a view.addSubView. So because we're using constraints, I don't need to set frame anymore because the frame will be calculated using my constraints. So frame is something that we're not going to be touching anymore, or most of the time not. I can't think of any reason right now why we would. So now we need to create our constraints. So does anyone remember from the homework what constraints we added for like a bar like this?
Top left, right, zero.
Yeah, and then one more. Height. Exactly. So let's do that. And I like to first create all my constraints and then activate them, and you'll see what I mean. So let top, so my top constraint, and so they're of type NS layout constraint. And now if you open NS layout constraint, there's only one usable initializer for that we're going to use, and that's the long one, very expressive one. So we want the views left be equal to our left, multiplied by 1 with a constant of 0, right? Does that make sense? Remember from the homework? Now we want to have the view, oh shit, sorry, top. Sorry. Right? I mean, we also need to do left, but I called my constants top. So let's do left here, layout constraints. So views left, and it's very possible that your Xcode source editor will crash every now and then while doing this. It will give you a message for that on top and give you not code hinting. So right equals same thing. You can actually copy this line because it's very repetitive. And just change the properties. No, I am very much struggling, right? Now, last one, height, right? Now, when you don't want to, so when you do height, you would use the pin tool, right? So you're not setting the height to anything else's height. You just give it a fixed height of 10 points. What that means is that you say view's height is equal to item nil height multiplied by 1 and a constant of 10. So that's going to create just a height not depending on anything else, just a height, 10 points at this point. Now we have all our constraints. The last thing we need to do is view. You always add the constraints on the main view. And it has two methods, add constraint, which is for one constraint, and add constraints, which takes an array of constraints. So I'm going to go with that one because I want to add all 4 of them together. So I just do top, left, right, height. That's it.
When you write like top, left, right, is that just, I don't really understand.
So this is again of type NS layout attribute dot top. But you can leave the first part out. Equal is of type NS layout relation dot equal.
It's relation to itself.
Yes. So we're saying the top of the view's top is equal to our top. Oh, yay! No, you're right. This is not going to work. Everything where it says self should be view. Thank you. View. Hmm?
Yeah. The last one.
Oh yes, that's nil. Sorry. Good point. Jesus.
So sorry about that and about the confusion. Also, good question about this.
I just immediately default to not typing it out. But if you do as layout constraints, if you just use your return, so view, and if I hit return here, you can see all the properties under NS layout. So center X, center Y, bottom, height, leading is almost the same as left, but I like to use left. I honestly don't really know what the big difference is. Leading will work just fine. The only thing you might have to do on the right, instead of 10 or 20, you might want to say minus 20. But that's why I don't like to use it, because sometimes it's minus and sometimes it's not. I don't know what it does. Left, right, top, trailing is right, width, and that's it. So that's how type that. And then NS layout relation, if you look under there, there is equal, greater than or equal, less than or equal, and that's it. But for now, you can probably default to equal. If I run my code, I hopefully have something that looks like the homework. There we go. Now, this is really ugly, and it's hard to see, but see how I have a line here in my editor? That is basically the edge that you don't want to cross while writing code, because there's this standard on the developers in web world, it's 80 characters. iOS is very expressive, so that's not possible. I set it to 120. So this is the reason why we have this is the worst. If I open this up on an 11-inch MacBook Air, this is unreadable. It's impossible to read. So what I like to do is, so first of all, get rid of these very long things. I like to say the item stop is related to the item stop. The view stop is related to the item stop multiplied by 1 constant of 0. So I like to break my lines like this, where first you say what item and what property, related how to what item, what property, multiplied by what with a constant of what. Does that make sense? That was a very strange way of saying it, but I mean, this is really preference. I feel like this breaking up of things makes sense.
So for each of the variables, why did you actually twice?
Because you might set some things top to other things bottom. Remember with, for instance, our scroll view, you want to have the top of one thing to be equal to the bottom of something else. So you would do the view stop is equal to a label's bottom. Just like it's right. So this is way prettier to look at, in my opinion. It does add a lot of lines of code. So that's why I was saying that adding constraints in code is a lot of code, basically. Now, I also mentioned that there are solutions for us, which we're not going to talk about, but this is if I create anything for real, if it's not just a little demo, I add this to my project. And we're not going to do this today and not in the coming weeks either, but we will at some point. And it basically allows you to make your constraints like this. So box is just a view, say box, make the width and the height equal to 50, make the center equal to self-lock, which is easy. So it allows you to write your constraints in 4 lines of code with constraints you just wrote rather than 12 or 16. So relief is coming at some point in the coming weeks, but not yet. But just know that you're not going to be doing, well, you could, but it's a lot of code, right? Any fundamental questions about this? All right, I'm gonna go over the example of having this. So 3 boxes in a container. Actually, I'm gonna put them in a container. Well, maybe I won't, but I will. I will. So I'm gonna try to be smart about it. I'm gonna try to write the least amount of code as possible, so bear with me, because that's something you will actually want to do in real life, not write a lot of code. So create container for boxes first, and then I'm gonna also create boxes. I'm gonna split it up into 2 functions. For boxes, func create boxes. And I actually allow to pass in a parameter for the number of boxes I want. So I'm going to start with 3, but I want this to be very dynamic so that I can easily, and I don't think it needs it, but I want it to pass in, so I'm going to create an external parameter name. And then I can't type, so I'm going to, so I'm trying out this new Vim thing in my Xcode, so I can like move around my cursor without using arrow keys. So I'm struggling still a little bit, but getting there. All right. So first of all, I want to just create a container that will be, for instance, a height of 200 points, and that's it. And I want it to be the top. So remember, in real life, in our application, I'm going to keep adding. So we have that little line we just created up here. And I'm going to add a container, and then in that container, I'm going to add X amount of boxes, basically. So first, the container. And the container, I already know is going to be something that we want to be accessible, because in create boxes, I will have to do container.add subview box, for instance. So let box container, just UI view. So box container, what is the first thing we always need to do? Always, 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 always. This tells the layout engine that we're not using Spring and structs, but all layout. I can imagine that this at some point will disappear, because Apple doesn't want you to use the old way of laying out stuff anymore, but on the other hand, they also don't want to break anything that already exists. So maybe it won't disappear for another couple of years, but it's really annoying. You always have to do this. The box containers background color, just for debugging, is a yellow color. And so view.add subview box container. Now I'm going to copy these constraints because they're basically the same. I want to have a left, a right, a top, and a bottom. A left, a right, a top, and a height. Same thing, right? So I'm just going to copy these and change them a little bit. So the top of my box container is going to be equal. And the shit already starts. I need access to my line as well. So see how I do this? I created this line that we have in our application right now locally in this function, right? But I want to set my box container top equal to my line's bottom. So I need access to my line if I want to do that. So I need to move that up here. So I'm going to do let line. So I'm going to make it a better name now. And so I'm going to change this all to line. Oops. We don't need to do this anymore. This is fun, isn't it? Changing all these names, so much fun. Line, line, line. Right, that's it. But now I can say box container stop is going to be equal to lines bottom. And so the left of my box container is going to be equal to my views left. The right of my box container is going to be equal to my views right. And the height of my box container is going to be equal to, let's say, 200. Okay. If I run my code now, we should see something that looks like this. Perfect. And if I rotate, it all still works. So just like last week, we have a perfect layout that works on each device size. So that was the easy part. Now it becomes, or is the hard part, we're gonna have to create our boxes. I actually think this is a little bit too high. Don't like it, so I'm gonna make it to be 150. 150, all right. Now, in create boxes, we pass in a number. So every time you like want to do something dynamically with a number, we're going to use a loop. A loop, right? We're going to, yeah, loops. Remember those things? How long ago is that already? So we're going to create a loop, and I'm just going to do, let's see, what am I going to do? For underscore and 0 to number of boxes. So if I am now not wrong, and I like to verify, I should see print statement for create box 2 times. Okay, okay. Can't, okay, number, there we go. So all goes well, I should see number, there we go, 3 boxes. I didn't create them yet, but I will at some point. Now this is where it's gonna get a little bit tricky. I'm gonna give you a fair warning, pay attention. But okay, we're gonna have to differentiate here between did we create a box earlier or did we not? If we did not, we wanna set the boxes left equal to the screens left, right, to the view.left. If we did create a box already, you wanna set the boxes left to the previous boxes right. That's the only tricky part. So we need to do that. Probably the best way, in my opinion, is using an optional. So I would do var previous box type UI view. So by default, there's no previous box. I create just an optional. Not going to worry about the left yet. I always like to keep the complex things for the right. I'm going to start with a. There's a couple of options here. Either we say 0, 0, or we say just 0 and equal height to the super view. I think I'm going to go with equal height, but also it doesn't matter. It's going to result in the exact same thing, so you can do whatever you want. I also don't know why I'm going with equal height, so maybe I am going with 0. Let's go with 0, because we're already doing 0 the whole time. So we're going to have to create a previous box. So let box equal to UI view, and then before I forget, I'm going to set previous box equal to box. Does that make sense? At the end of the loop, for the next iteration, the previous box is the current box. So let me actually, and don't ever copy this, but I'm going to add another class in here. Normally we would do this in a separate file, right? I don't want to create a separate file because this is really an easy thing. Random color, it's going to return a UI color. So I don't have that in my loop, which is cluttering. With random color, return color. All right. So now I can just do box.background color equals utilities.random color. Isn't that beautiful? So, and I already, I'm not being a good student right now because I forgot this. And so I don't want to add my box to my view. I want to add it to my container for the boxes, right? So I'm going to do box container.add subview box. So right now I'm just creating 3 views and adding them to my container I created for them. So nothing crazy yet. Now I need to set up my constraints. So again, worry about the left constraint as the last one. I'm going to worry about the top constraint, and I'm going to worry about the bottom constraint. What else? We're going to need a left constraint at the end, and then there's going to be one more trick we need to do, but I'm going to wait with that one. So let's start with top equals NS layout constraint. Here we go again. I'm going to actually copy this again because it's a lot of typing and it's late at night. So top. So I want to be the boxes top. I want to be equal to the box containers top. Right? Now same thing for the bottom. So the bottom, the boxes bottom should be equal to box containers bottom. All right? These make sense? Okay. So now, if let previous box equals previous box, right? Optional binding to check if we have a value. So in this case, not the first box. I'm going to worry about that one later. I'm going to start with the easiest one, first box. I'm going to do let me actually think what the best way is to do this. I'm going to do something mildly bad, but not really. I'm going to create a placeholder. I'm going to give it an exclamation mark, which means, let's not give it an exclamation mark. I'm just going to create a non-saying n is layout constraint, not passing in any information. And then in my if and else statement, I'm going to override it with a new one. You'll see. So if it's the first box, I want the left equal to just another and as layout constraint. So the boxes left is equals to the box containers left, right? But if there is, I want to do left equals the boxes left equal to, once a guess? Oops, yep, exactly. And here? Right. Exactly. That makes sense. So last thing I need to do is view.add constraints. So top, bottom, left, and I forgot one. I forgot two actually. If it's, wait, I'm thinking. No, I don't think, okay, I'm thinking. There's one more thing I need. This is also for me, by the way, Andre, do you have a charger? The key to make this whole thing succeed is, right now we have no way of knowing what width they have to be. We didn't set a width, right? You calculate their own height using top and bottom, and we have something for the left, but we don't have anything for the right. There's a couple of options we can do. We either can set the width to be equal to the box containers width and give it a multiplier, depending on the amount of boxes. Let's say you have 3 boxes, you want to be a multiplier of 0.333. That's probably not the ideal way.
You could just do left plus whatever.
That's not going to work because if you rotate, that plus value is not going to be the same. So I think the best way.
Your right is always a certain distance from your own left.
Yes, but that distance is not fixed, right? Because if you're on knife on 4.
Oh.
So what I'm going to do, and I'm really trying with you guys here too. So I'm going to say if I.
What if you take containers with divider?
Yes, that's what you can do. I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't know why. I'm going to try something else, but it would definitely work. It would definitely work. So let me think here. So I is going to be 0, 1, and 2, right? So if I is equal to number of boxes minus 1, that's the last box, right? If we create 3 boxes, it's going to be 0, 1, and 2. What I'm going to do is do a right constraint. And actually, let me again copy this because I hate that. I'm going to say the boxes right is equal to the box containers right. And in that case, I'm also going to do view.add constraint. But this is only one constraint, not an array of constraints. So it's just gonna add one more in case it's the last one. I'm gonna run this. I'm 99% sure it's not gonna work. We're missing one constraint, and I know which one. But I wanna see if we get an error. We don't get an error, but we don't see anything. Great. That's really weird, actually. We don't get an error. All right. Let's see actually if we can, if we do debug, view debugging, capture view hierarchy. Doesn't look like it added it. All right, I'm gonna add the constraint that I know we're missing for sure. I'm thinking. It's not the first box. We want to say let equal width equals. We want to say this box's width is equal to the previous box's width. I think that's the one we're missing. In that case, we do view.add constraints equal width. Fingers crossed. Pretty cool, right? So what did we do? So again, there's multiple ways of fixing this. You could have, let's say you don't do all of this. You could have said something like this. Let equal width equals, so the box's width is equal to the box container's width. Maybe I actually like this more, you're right. And this is gonna have to be a CG float of 1 divided by number of, guys, it's not working. Oh, I never added that constraint, so it's not gonna work. And now up here, do equal. I think that's actually nicer because now you apply them, you're right, to all of them. Oh, no. This is what you get when you fucked up your constraints. So you see where the fun starts to kick in, right? So let's take a look if I can actually figure this out. Half of the time it's Chinese TV2. All right, so we're saying, oh, I don't think we have to do the right constraint in this case either. Maybe that's why. This is really trial and error once you get, I'm just gonna not add it. If you create it and don't add it ever, it's not playing in the game, right? Well, that was not it. Let's take a look again. So it's breaking the height, left to right. It's deleting this one. Wait, let's think about this. So you have a top, bottom. Oh, wait, no, left is activated. To right. Yes. So something is.
Because if you set the width to just 1/3 of the you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So I delete or comment this line out, right? So it's not because you create a constraint that it does it, right? You have to actually add it to the view before it activates. And if I do that, it doesn't show anything. It's no conflicting. No, but see, that's the thing. That doesn't change anything. I mean, I want to try it for you, but what is that? If you don't add a constraint, then it's like it never existed even. So now we have top, bottom, left, and right. No, top, bottom, left, and equal width. I feel like it has something to do with left almost in this layer constraint. Equal width. Anyway, I think my solution worked. I'm willing to investigate why this one is not. I'm going to just revert back to what we had.
I didn't know the width in your original.
Good question. I'm going to explain that to you. So this one equal width we got rid of. So now we should be in a working condition again, right? All goes well? Yes. So how did it know the width? Well, if it's the first one, we start by attaching the first box's left to the left of the container, right? If it's not the first one though, we say the left is equal to your previous box's left. And if it's the last one, we assign the right to be to the right of the container. So at that moment, you have three boxes that are connected to each other, and the first one connected to the left, but that's not enough. If you do not have the equal width, then it's not going to work. And that's a little trick. You just have to know that. If you want things to be equal width, you want to set, not for the first one, but if it's not the first one, you want to say, I want my width to be equal to the previous width. And then for the second one, or for the last one in our curve, so if you look here, this one says, the green one says, I want my width to be equal to the width of the yellow one. And then this one just says, I want my width to be equal to this one's width. And at that moment, it knows it has enough information to lay itself out. But you would think maybe that if this is attached to the left, these two are attached to each other, these two are attached to each other, and this one is attached to the right, that would be enough, but it's not. You need to add the equal width constraints.
Yeah, and I guess that's what's throwing me off is that you never set the yellow box's width.
That doesn't matter. So if you're assigning this one to be equal width to this one, or the green one to the yellow one, and the blue one to the...
So I'm just assuming that it just kind of inferred that
Yeah.
hey, you have three boxes
Yeah.
and you're just going to be...
And they're attached to the side, they're attached to each other, and they're equal width, and that's enough for the
So it doesn't create boxes one by one. It has to run through all three items in the loop.
Yes.
Before it knows the width.
Yes, and that's fine because this all happens in view.load, so it's laying out itself. That's fine. So, and in storyboards, you would do the same thing, right? Like if you're dragging just views out, you would attach this one to the left. You would assign 0 horizontal spacing in between these two, 0 horizontal spacing in between these two, and then assign the right to this one. And then you can choose how you say this is equal width to this, and this is equal width to this, or you can, what I would do typically is say this is equal width to this, and this is equal width to this. But in theory, that doesn't change anything. Saying that both are equal width to this, or this to this, and this to this is the same thing, right? So fun stuff, right? But you can see, I mean, I have to admit, it's a lot of code, but it's dynamic, right? So we can say 10, and it's still going to work, and it's just going to create this beautiful thing.
We cannot set equal width to something else in the story.
Yes, you can. That's what I tried. So I tried to assign the width to be equal to the container's width multiplied by, for instance, 0.3333, but that didn't seem to work.
We can do it in the storyboard.
Yes. Well, I don't have a storyboard item right now, but let's say, remember with scroll view how with the content view in the scroll view, how we drag from the content view to the view on top of the scroll view and say equal width. Jesus, open as. No. Computer. Open as interface build. So one of the first constraints we need to do with scroll view is we say content view is equal, see how it's selected, equal width to the view. All right. Now, what I just did might become awkwardly familiar when you want to start working with a calculator. Because if you look at your calculator, what is a calculator? It's all buttons with equal widths and equal heights. So there you go.
So are we going to be doing the calculator in your code?
You can, but I honestly do not recommend it. Like,
all right, good.
you're gonna write 400 lines of code just laying it out without any functionality. So you don't want to do that. Also, you saw what a mess you get when you have a constraint that doesn't work. Good luck starting to figure it out.
That one is still not like sitting with me as well because of the inferring.
I know,
Like,
it's just,
give it a value. So it's like it's kind of throwing me off.
That's a little bit of magic, I guess. Yeah.
I think there's no other way to solve it other than doing that, right? That's, I guess computers are extremely smart.
It's like stretching.
Yeah, but that's what is happening.
That's what's in my head, but I'm just
And
like,
the golden
dang, like,
rule to make it work is by both to all of them saying you're equal widths to each other, because that's basically what you're saying. Even if you're never saying it for this one, equal width is bidirectional, right? So if this one is equal width to this one is also equal width to this one. So it actually does have an equal width on it.
It does, and that's why I guess I'm confused as why the other thing did.
Okay,
work,
let's do it in storyboards as a just a comparison, right? I'm gonna drag out a UI view, and I'm gonna get rid of this one here. So a UI view, and this is gonna be our container, and you'll see the moment where our constraints are enough for the storyboard to be happy, right? So I'm gonna set this to be 0, 0, 0. And a fixed height, right? And now I'm gonna drag in a UI view, give it some coloring. So I'm gonna say, you are, and I always like to make them less wide in the beginning, and then at the end they will just snap to the right position, as you'll see. So 0, 0, 0. And that's it. So it's now complaining, oh, but I don't know what my width is, because it doesn't at this moment. We didn't give it a width, which is fine. I'm just gonna copy this one. Make sure you don't paste it in itself like I'm doing, just select this. See, pasting stuff is the worst in storyboards. Okay, there we go. You can even, if you wanna be sure, add some space in there, and then I'm just gonna say, oops, 0, 0, 0. Right? Now let's do another one. Yeah, and I fucking hate it. It just doesn't put it in the right place ever.
It works if you option drag though, right?
Oh yeah, that does work. Good point. So I'm gonna make this one some like other color. No help. I don't need help. Go away. And then this one some greener color. So right now again, I'm gonna do 0, 0, 0, 0. And so right now it's gonna say this. And the key is just now to drag and say equal widths, and drag and say equal widths. And we're all good. Right now we just have framing errors because they're not actually lining up, and all we do is update frames for all the views. Ta-da! So it's definitely easier to do it in storyboards in this case, right? But it's not dynamic. I can't make 10 of them. It's always going to be 3. So that's the big difference. Cool. Also, might not get to it today, although it's only 8. Is it only 8:05?
No.
Oh, I was like, I have so much time left. Great. You, just like we also do interesting thing, view.add constraints, you can also just do view.remove constraints and pass any constraints. So for the example I showed you, you need to do that. I don't think we're going to get to it today, but I'm going to quickly explain it, and you guys can do some playing with stuff. But what is happening is the first time you click this is you're setting 0, 0, 0, 0, right? But the next time you add this one has to go away. Otherwise, it's never going to work, right? Because you're adding in another one here. So when I click another time, what happens is you're saying this top is equal to this one's bottom, and this one's bottom is equals to the view bottom, and these are equal heights. So this is the same thing, equal heights. So every time you add an item, it removes one constraint and puts something in place saying this view's bottom is equals to the view's bottom. So if you look at the code for that, and I'm going to post it on GitHub in the solutions. So let's take a look what we do in add item. We just create a new item, same thing, translate all the sizing into constraints false. We insert it. See how I use below? It probably didn't matter here because they are equal height and never overlapping, but whatever. Again, easy things first. Left and right are always going to be 0, no matter what. I have a optional constraint here saying last item bottom constraint, and I have an optional view last item. So I could have probably done it with only one, but decided to keep track of both. So I say if there is a last item bottom constraint, remove that constraint from the view. So at that point, the bottom of the constraint is gone. So it doesn't know enough information to calculate its layout. But that's fine because layout is very fast. So what we then say is the last item bottom constraint, so we update that variable, is the item's bottom is equal to the view's bottom. So this is for the new item that just got added. And then we say if there is a last item, we set the top equal to the last item's bottom, and we set equal height to the last item. So new item's height is equal to last item's height. And we add all of these constraints. If it is the first item node, we set the item's top equals to the view's top, and then we add all of these constraints. Then we just say last item equals item. So the key, the important part is this here, otherwise it would never be able to calculate its own or the right constraints. Cool? For your own viewing pleasure on GitHub, happy to answer any questions about it. Also, just a quick thing I tried to show. So you know how if you add the colon, you get past your button, right? But let's say you want to use this function in a loop. You actually have to add a button, so now you know how to just create a button. All it is expecting is a button, right? And we're never using that button, so you can just pass it an empty button that doesn't do anything. So right now, if I run this code, it will have 300 lines on the screen already, just like you would have clicked that button 300 times. So just showing that what we've been doing today actually starts to get really useful. If this, it's cool, right? And I mean, I can still keep adding. It's probably very hard to see, but see how it keeps and fun stuff, right? Anyhow, now it's your guys' turn. Blah blah, multiple constraints, and same thing like with interface builder. You have to be able to figure out origin and styles. Not a group assignment. This is your guys. You'll see that there is a starter project in today's folder, and you need to create a robot. Let me see. I think I think I prepared this at home. If all goes well. This is not it.
So there's a starter project?
There should be, yes, in week 12. Oh, it's probably this one. No? I just pushed it up before class though, so you might want to pull again. Yes. And I don't remember. Okay, so this is what you should end up. Oh, wait. Does it have all the code in it already? Can you please delete it and try it again for your own sake? Sorry, I forgot to delete the code. But really, please do, so you get used to practicing this. So you want this. And so you'll see that the face is in the storyboard. So you can mix and match this, right? There's an outlet to the first one in the view controller, but that's just the UI view like anything else. So you can do this arm's top is equal to the outlet's bottom in your constraints. So, and if you rotate it, it should still, all right? So just please delete all the code except for view.load and then write some constraints. As you see, this is 300 lines of code just to write for a stupid robot. I mean, there's a lot of copy-paste happening, of course. And also, I'm already happy if you, well, do as much as you can. I am very well aware of the fact that we have only 20 minutes left. And I want to use the last 10 minutes to talk about something else. So let's say 10, 15 minutes. This will throw me off.
What's the company called again?
Media Monks.
Media Monks.
Yeah, there was something. Also work with very big clients, just in general. Macy's, John Walker, US.
That's what I want to do.
It's like something that really doesn't interesting. Zero care. I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I just don't want to do it myself. It's like super mathematical.
Can you show how the robot looks like?
Yeah. Like it's a robot you never forget once you see it do.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah, you do. Of course you do.
That was annoying.
I think it's easiest if you start with the body. Well, maybe not. I think it's easiest if you start with the legs. Because the body depends on the legs, right? The body stop is going to be equal to the head's bottom, and the body's bottom is going to be equal to the one leg stop. And if both legs are the same height, it doesn't matter which one you choose. So let's start with the two legs, then this, then the body, and then the two arms.
Amsterdam headquarters.
Yep. That was the top company on my list. If I had to move back to Europe, I would apply there for sure. I don't know if I would have gone to top, but
I've been to everything. Game development.
yeah, dude, they're huge. I don't know how many people there are, but they're huge.
It's insane.
They do a lot of iOS development too.
You work with every technology.
Yeah, look how you're only there. Unities. Also, like in the coolest cities ever. Chill, nice.
I need to go to Stockholm. Virtual reality creative.
Look at all the cities that are in there. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Amsterdam, London, Stockholm, New York, LA, Singapore, Dubai.
Like, what? Can I just go in all of it for a year?
Love jump around.
Yeah, love to live in Singapore, LA, and then Amsterdam maybe for a year, maybe some Stockholm, sure. Let's get Dubai necessarily, not really tempted to live there, but New York, sure. They're huge, just huge.
I like that little tagline. Creative with care, coded by coffee, celebrated with champagne.
I don't think that personal website is necessarily the most beautiful one, but
Yeah, their work.
their work is outstanding.
See, that's definitely somewhere I would love to work.
Yeah, me too.
I would want to jump to all those things. Like, I want to be on video team, to go to the VR team, 3D team.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you put the clock?
Yeah. Wait, which one? Not this one, obviously. This is good. Wait, let's go to the one we just had. Wait, is this it? This is stuff we were doing.
I do think though that the code is writing your constraints yourself makes you understand your layouts constraints on your story workflow better, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it helped for me. Also, if you have questions, let me know. I was gonna go to Charleston this weekend, and the flights are like $500 for an hour and a half. That's just dumb. Flights on Google. DCA, ideally.
Huh?
DCA, ideally. So again, you probably really want to start with the legs because everything else depends on that.
Where's the destination?
South Carolina, Charleston. Ideally Friday night till Sunday night, but no, I'm being very demanding. It's crazy, right? And I like looked a month ago for that same for a weekend. Last month it was like 250, which is fine. But 500 is just dumb. The beautiful part of writing this many lines of code for constraints is when we do actually use that little library, you're going to feel like you're in heaven. I promise you, it's going to be the best thing ever.
How are you guys feeling about this? Take that as a crepe. Right? I'm so happy I did it. I don't need to use my mouse anymore. That's the beautiful thing. Great. Once you get used to it, it's the most beautiful thing ever. No. So you can copy lines like this, just paste them in again using like DD and Shift P. It's beautiful. You don't need to use commanding anymore. That's what's next. All right, guys. I have a little treat for the last 5 minutes. Solution to the robot is online, obviously. You just deleted all of it, so I don't think I need to go over it. Do you want me to go over it? Which one is the robot? I feel like the solution is there. Okay, so the key.
I think we can go through the solution on our own.
Yeah, the key is really just setting, for instance, I want these to be 80 points. I want it to be center X with an offset of whatever this is. Let's say this is 40, so this one with minus 40 and 40, or the other way around, whatever, right? And then the next thing is you create a body at the top equal to the head's bottom, and the bottom equals to the leg's top, and then a fixed height, fixed width of 40, and a center X, and then this is just a fixed height, and then you attach the left to the right side of the body, and the right to the left side of the body. And that's it. But what
Are there other things other than center X that we didn't really? I know we talked about it like the last time when we were going over that, but are there any other? So center.
Baseline is another one. So top, right, left, bottom, center X, center Y, equal width, equal height. Baseline is an interesting one, so that's more for labels and fonts. So it will actually, the baseline of a font will match it up. And so baseline, when you have like a font is here, right? Like not with the piece included. So the baseline is like the main line where your normal characters are. And I think those are the important ones.
One question. So is it zap.view that X of view instead of just view that X of view?
It's the same thing. It depending, normally you're going to be fine doing just view.add subview, but you're never going to be wrong by doing cell.view.add subview. The only reason why it sometimes is going to matter, and this is one of the reasons I'm going to show now, is when you're in the block. Then you have to do self. So we talked about blocks briefly. We're going to talk about blocks when we do animation, like now, in the last 5 minutes. Then you need to do self-talk. All right, so what do I have to show you guys? Just a little visual treat to end the lesson. All I did is I modified our example a little bit, and I have a button that says toggle height. So if you remember correctly, our container by default had a height of 150. So what did I change? I created this container height constraint, set it to an NS layout constraint, and where we had our height constraint, so this used to say let height equals blah, blah. I just make it accessible to everyone now. So I say container height constraint equals box container. Its height is equal to nothing, 150, right? And I add that constraint. What I also did is I created a variable saying container is expanded, which by default is false. And I created an extra button, and every time that button is pressed, I inverse that flag. And if the container is expanded, I change the constant back to 150. If we want to expand it, I change it to 200. So the only thing you can modify on the constraint is the constant. If you want to modify other things, you need to start removing and adding constraints. But with constant, you can play just by updating it. Now this is pretty cool, but it would be nice if everything's smoothly animated instead of jumping. And we're going to talk about animation way more, but it's really easy, and I just wanted to end the lesson on something like fun. And the reason, or how you do that, is you just do a class function on UI view. You have the most basic one is animate with duration. And so you pass in the duration, for instance, 0.5 seconds, and your animations are blocked. So you just hit return, and normally you would do your animations in here, but if you update the constant, all you need to do is view layout if needed. And we're going to talk about this when we start talking about animation. Oh, and here, see, because we're in a block, you need to do cell.view. Cell.view layout if needed. And now we will have a very nice smooth transition over 0.5 seconds. And there's possibilities to add easing and bounciness and all those things. But the very basics is this, and this is really long now, 3.5 seconds, but you see it gradually grows. So it's as easy if you update the constant of 1 or 2 or 7 constraint, no matter how much, you can make it animate just by calling self-up.layout. That's all I have for today. I'm going to check, but I don't think there's homework this week because we have fun stuff starting on Wednesday, and you'll have plenty to do on that. And that's all I have. So starting on Wednesday, we do 2 classes of midterm, and that's it.
So do we start midterms on the weekend, or do we start in class?
In class. So Wednesday is going to be 100% in class working on the midterm. So I'm going to take the first 20 minutes probably explaining it, giving some tips, and then you guys can start, and we are here for questions the whole time.
We'll continue working on that Monday.
Yes. Now, if you are very ambitious and you finish it before Monday, happy to create some extra content for the people that are done already, or
Do you get to work on it over the weekend?
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to come to your house and say maybe you cannot work on this. No, you can, and you probably will want to. Maybe we'll see. We'll see how far we get on Wednesday, how much time you have. Please fill out exit surveys. Last week nobody did, and that's fine because you had the big one, but the big one is gone now, so always excited for survey results. And I'll see you on Wednesday. Let us